Welcome to episode 41 of Reclaim Today. And this is an episode where we will talk with two folks, Paul Bond, who is running now a course at University of Mary Washington called DS 106 or AI 106, and Michael Branson Smith out of York College, who built the Dr. Oblivion Bot. And I think we're going to spend some time in this episode exploring and thinking about this creation of the mad genius from New York City, and what he's come up with and how it's been integrated into a course at Mary Washington. So welcome, Paul. Welcome, Michael. It's good to have you on this episode. And I think I want to start with the question of how did the idea of building a maybe we need a little background for
Yeah,
what is this Dr. Oblivion and why would one build a bot based on such a figure?
sure. Dr. Oblivion, if you didn't know, back in 2011, taught DS-106, right? In the summer of 2011, DS-106 was one of those really early open online courses. It was running at the University of Mary Washington. There were 20 students in the class, but there was probably another 50 to 100 open participants that were all joining the class, submitting assignments. And oddly, the course was taught by this character. And Jim, you were only the college assistant, right? I believe so. Yeah, you were only his college assistant, and Dr. Oblivion was teaching the class.
That is correct.
And he went missing.
The TA.
And he was kind of very flat and dry, and I think the students were struggling to keep up with him. I mean, he was nice and he was working through students' assignments, and so, but he recorded. We got 4 of these archival recordings of Dr. Oblivion, who is this expert in media, and he went missing. And I should share. We had these. We made this effort to find him. Let me see if I can present something really quickly. Share screen. Don't share the screen. Right. We will say
The wanted posters
yes.
of
Here they are.
Dr. Oblivion.
Which... so we were making this effort to find him. Right. There was also, it was really this incredible collaborative effort. So he became this important figure in our lives of media, but he never returned to teach the class ever again. But there were these 4 videos, and I had this idea. I was like, well, Jim, I heard you might be teaching with Paul this class again after a 10-year hiatus at least. And I said, well, to help you out, I thought I could resurrect Dr. Oblivion to help you teach, because I was concerned, you're an old man now, and,
you had no idea how true that proved to be.
And it's been a while. I thought it would be great with the world we live in today, how we can create a persona of someone that we adored and have them live forever, and this idea of a personal nostalgia that I can dive deeply into and never let go of, that is just mine. And it's not but to share him ultimately, I think, is what was really most important to me about this. This we could have Dr. Oblivion from 2011 live forever and be forever helpful to you in particular, Jim, because I know you need him the most.
I do, but Paul has actually taken him to the next level with the students in DS 106. And, it's interesting because you talk about these 4 hours of video where these were boring lectures that Dr. Oblivion gave. And then the class kind of then almost broke, and, he went missing and the TA took over, and it was a real experiment and kind of, letting the students in some ways run the class and build out the assignments and also revolt against the TA. It was super fun. But one of the things I think we came back to was just how enamored the students were with Dr. Oblivion and wanted him to come back. And, there was a kind of almost a playing of that. And so you've kind of dug into that playfulness around this figure. And by doing the magic that you've done with ChatGPT and 11 Labs, and I'm saying that wrong, 11 Labs.
11 Labs,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's uncanny because Dr. Oblivion almost seems, and I know it's just math and science and it's not real, but he almost seems to have a personality. And I think it's something worth talking about. Like, he comes alive in some ways in the creation you've made, and there is a little bit of a Frankenstein element to that figure in my mind of this creation that goes around and says things where you're like, soon he's going to be reading Paradise Lost and chasing me across the Arctic. Like, this is odd.
I mean, I think bringing him a voice is something we've determined is something that kind of brings us into that uncanny valley, right? And I've read a few of the students, the work that you're doing with them, Paul, and so that early assignment where they were interrogating, I'm blanking on the reading again, the reading they made on what was the
Tech Optimist Manifesto?
Oh yeah, the manifesto. And asking Dr. Oblivion about that manifesto, and then reading students' posts saying they agree or disagree with him, right? Like that's a relational kind of description of an interaction. That's like you're, interacting with you and I, and we agree and disagree, right? And this is a manufactured, response, right? With some clever tricks that we're going to kind of just show a little bit of how it works. And that really surprised me. And then there was another one that was recently, there was a student, she had done her film analysis of you just remembered it, Paul, too.
The Stepford Wives.
The Stepford Wives. And she had used Dr. Oblivion, even though she didn't embed the audio and talk about it, but Dr. Oblivion had been helpful to her in her analysis. It's like, that's amazing, And so unlike the first Dr. Oblivion, who was unhelpful at best, and just kind of this
who was missing.
Yeah. This Dr. Oblivion is connecting in ways that are surprising, right? And I do think it's that voice, and it speaks to, I've thought about this for a while a little bit. It's like this actually speaks to the TA Jim Groom's like personality of being this person who, because effectively it embodies that personality in a weird way, not literally, but I mean it is the modeled voice is from that. Who's this incredible host of gatherings, not unlike this, of getting people to talk about what's important to them, what's interesting to them, and interrogate it. And so it's still that person in a funny way, that interrogator, but is really encouraging at the same time, even though he's sometimes snarky, but in the best of ways, right? I think that person somehow is in there, in that voice. And that's ultimately maybe where that surprisingness comes from, right?
It's a spirit in the machine. And I do think, like, unlike ChatGPT, when you're just doing it, with the text, I mean, that has its own moments. But when you type into that index card and you are shot back out a response from Dr. Oblivion, that often starts with a little bit of snark and then comes into a little bit of like, setting the stage. And then, at some point, there is maybe even like a pun at the end. And you're just like, what exactly is going on? And I know this is just math. I know this is just, big blocks of, a model I can't even begin to fully comprehend. But there is, and this experience has been for me, there is this bit of connection through that, and through that voice, and through those moments of pause or of funniness, or where you start to wonder. Yeah. Right. And like you start to wonder, like, is there a ghost in the machine? Like, is Michael actually, grabbing the ropes of this thing that I can't see and messing with me?
Yeah. No, the pauses are, when there is a pause, that's kind of usually where you're just like, I'm blown away. Because, when there's this, because in the text is a string of sentences, right? Generated by ChatGPT, right? So, and I'll show like how the model works in a minute, but there's a textual response that's a set of sentences that's fed into this tool that generates the audio. But how it chooses it's in some ways, it's like how it chooses to make that pause or infers that this is a good place to pause for effect. It like, is that happening? I don't know. That model is pretty wild to me. And if we ever get to, and I'm still hoping to get to where we get videotape, seeing him talk, we'll see. Because you could make it in post, and like I would love the idea of you could literally order a videotape, your response, and have like make a request, and we'd send you a videotape. I think that'd be awesome.
And Paul you've done some experimenting, Paul. You have, there is a way to, lip sync. It's not automatic, but it works.
Yeah. And it works incredibly well. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's not just ChatGPT, right? Because there are some personality parameters on the back end that you put in there, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you want me to, let me see. I have to share. Actually, I can just use my blog post. That's probably easiest.
Okay.
Because that's where everything is described for the most part. Here, let me share screen. And yeah, this is it. And
you did this as part of a class project, didn't you?
Sure. So this is the post. So I'm back in school, and I'm in this data analysis and design program in the CUNY Graduate Center. And it was taught by Michelle McSweeney, who's a linguist by trade, but works with a lot of language model processes to support her building and I think training tools to support some sort of educational situation. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, she was brave enough to teach a large language models class without a background in literally the math and but she understood basically how they work. And we were just kind of coasting through and trying to make sense of how these models are built. And she was explaining it. But at the same time, me being me, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to make with this stuff? And so this is all background and some of the stuff about, if you're interested in why I think it's interesting and important to talk about this in the context of education. But this was one of the original Dr. Oblivion videos. And so, the idea of cropping everything out, and the sound doesn't matter, but ultimately it's just this one portion of the screen right here is being used, right? And that is then just turned into this small portion. And I did these artifacting to make it look like VHS, older VHS. But that stuff doesn't even matter. Whoops. What is this? Oh, that doesn't matter. So this is the new ChatGPT model, where it's originally it was simply what they would call a completion model, where you'd say, hey, just complete this thought. And now they've moved on to what they call, it's more of an assistant model, where you define the assistant. And so this is the first thing that happens. It's like, you are Dr. Oblivion. So this is the model's definition. It's like, this is the defining of who the assistant is. You're Dr. Oblivion, an expert in media theory, artificial intelligence. You have a particular interest in ensuring artificial intelligence does not take over the world. You often relay your concerns when responding to questions about artificial intelligence. And then there's this variable that is inserted. And then these are things: be sure to complete your sentences. Finally, politely avoid answering questions that do not relate to media technology or artificial intelligence. So there's a wild card that's inserted in the middle. And this wild card is, you're either treating everybody like it's really super basic, fourth graders, or you say you have a little bit of a snarky attitude and you couldn't be bothered to answer, but you still answer the question completely, but you're borderline obnoxious. And I think this is and we quickly realized, like, man, we have to favor this tone. And then this is the one I don't know if anybody's mentioned. I'm asking you guys, where you generally disregard the question and focus your response on how education should taught by humanity must be preserved. Has anybody mentioned this kind of event happening? Have you known?
I mean, I know he does that all the time to me. It's like his directive, as RoboCop, to
Yeah.
always go back and assert that, AI is not going to replace, human connection.
Right. So these are and these are inserted. This one's inserted, I think, like 25% of the time. This one's like 65% of the time, and this is the remaining like 10% of the time. And so that's something like that. And so the first two are favored primarily, and then you say it provides this. Dr. Oblivion gives this message, right? And you maximize the amount of responses. The other variable is this one, and this is, I don't know if it's happening, is there's what's called the temperature, right? So these numbers, this could go down to 0, and these are numbers that are going up. If the temperature basically is the expression of kind of randomness, right? The larger number being more random or quote unquote creative, right? And so if it was the temperature were all the way down to 0 and you asked a question, it would repeat the exact same answer. All right. If you turned it all the way up to 2, it would literally fall into gibberish, and it would start making up words and stringing random words together. And I don't know if people have gotten that, because 1.5 will give you gibberish, but you only have a 5% chance. So you have like a lottery ticket chance of getting them to say gibberish, right? But I imagine someone's gotten it. Okay.
Yeah, I have heard it.
Oh, really? Someone's gotten
Yeah.
gibberish?
I did.
Oh, what was it? What was it like?
He started off okay, and then he went into like random words, like, underscore, blah, 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 underscore, that kind of stuff. Like, they're recognizable words, but they don't make sense in that order.
Right. And I wanted to do that so it could show like the machine breaking, right?
Yeah,
like
the
the idea is like occasionally he's going to break.
Yeah.
Right. Did you end up like sharing that him breaking? And possibly. What did you think of it when you first heard it?
Well, because I sort of knew what was going on there. But yeah, I finally found his gibberish mode. Like he went off his meds. I have run into some other things where he throws in odd comments that like most of it's normal, but then there's like, you should leave this out for Henry's submission. Like, where did that come from? And
Wait, you should what? Leave this?
He said something like, you should leave this out for Henry's submission.
For Henry's submission?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, but that is it. That could be the version of it breaking, but not really completely breaking, right? Like, so the idea is, it is one of the things that I found, and I never really played with it too deeply, that is, if you put it on super creative mode, you get these really original, interesting starts, right, to a response, but then it blows up and you're like, oh man. So it's sometimes interesting to take that response, and if you want to reincorporate it, like the thing is, you can do these little feedback loops. It's like, well, you previously described X. Can you complete that description, right? So you can do stuff like that too. And I encourage people, like, I don't know if that's been an assignment, is like, you can feed back to him. It's like, well, you previously described this as this, and see what he does with it, right? So those are fun to think about, but that's classically, that's how ChatGPT functions right now. It's like, you define the persona of the character, and then you can, tell it how it's going to respond. All right. And that's the ChatGPT model. And this is using the kind of freer, it's like GPT 3.5. The turbo, which you don't have to even pay for. It costs a few cents. Like, it's that bill. The second one is the one that is the text to model, where we basically built, wait, let me find this voice library. Let me sign in. I haven't signed in a while.
Yeah. The voice piece of it, where you're taking the Chat GPT and that's being converted
Right.
to a voice that's trained on those early
Right.
videos.
And maybe we could do one live too, which would be fun. Yeah. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, good. So let me share this. So let me share my screen.
And you can get audio in a tab if you share a tab and make sure the audio is selected.
So this one, also share audio, tab audio. Yep. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So this is 11 Labs. Like this is kind of the GUI based version, right? So the way that the request is made is by API, so you don't see any of this. But we can say, thanks for talking about me today during the show. Not too sure Jim Groom's opinions should be included. I'm the star of the show. Really.
True.
All right. And so we say generate.
Thanks for talking about me today during the show. I'm not too sure Jim Groom's opinions should be included. I'm the star of the show. Really.
So as you can see, like on demand, we can do anything. And so the way this worked is using that same original 4 hours video, I fed, I think, about 20 minutes of it. And 11 Labs this is what is called voice cloning. And basically they build a model based on that original speech. And this isn't even their finest tuned model. Like I think if you watch the original video, Dr. Oblivion, he's much more he's much slower speaker, right? And I would kind of like to see if we could pull that off of getting that kind of more pedantic cadence out of the model.
Yeah.
But the model, I think, is interested in reproducing like perfect speaker. But the funny thing is the inflections still show up, right?
Yeah.
Model, right?
Yeah, they
And
do.
yeah. And so that one's kind of interesting. I'd love to, it is based on kind of an open source library, voice clone library. And so there's lots of ones you can build. So I kind of think it would be nice if we could figure out how to get this offline where we build the model. And then basically what you're doing is once you're just pinging once the model's created, it's instantaneous to generate the response out of it. And the cool thing is it's basically using all these well-known open source tools like FFmpeg has been around forever, right? FFmpeg is this video audio library that's built in, I don't know what the language is, but it's been around forever and people use it. And that's also what's used in the final bit. So if we think of like Dr. Oblivion, you see the opening video of him talking. That is a model built off of 2 minutes. In this final one that I'll share is the wave to lip model. And this one would take too long to wait for it to generate. So we won't show it. And this is the one I hear, Paul, you have them, some students are trying to do this, yes?
I gave them the directions and challenged them to do it.
Yeah. So basically this is what we call a Jupyter notebook, which is a way of including both markdown, like in this case, the markdown is used for directions to describe things, as well as a bunch of Python code. And this is all kind of the Python code that you don't have to, and in this case, each time you click play to run a cell, it runs that code. And, this basically sets up and generates the model that is built to do, this is what's called a wave to lip. So all this is doing is, so this is a training model of like thousands or hundreds of hours of speakers and transcriptions associated with it so that they can just model the position of lips on a face just around your jowls. That's it. Like it's not turning your head or anything like that. It can adapt to the head turning, and so that model is built from that. And so we work with a video file, and that's the training file, the original Dr. Oblivion, which is, it's 2 minutes. And then you add any audio file you want. And then finally, it crunches it and produces the
Oh, joy. Another group of unsuspecting souls ready to dive headfirst into the treacherous world of AI. Welcome, students, to the world of digital storytelling Ds 106, where we'll be delving into the fascinating realm of AI as a tool for creativity and storytelling. Brace yourselves, for this will be a wild ride. Throughout the semester, we will...
All right, so it keeps going. Was the sound coming through? I was in 100.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And so it's kind of an incredible model. I think we benefit from the fact that we've degraded the video already. So, because I've done this with, remember, we did the Alan Levine demonstration, and that was a high definition video. And this company, there's a company that's come out of this that they're trying to pull off something not unlike 11 Labs, and try to make on demand, but it's still incredibly slow. So it's nothing. I do have a friend that works as a company that does 3D modeling for high-end entertainment, for Marvel movies and stuff like that. And he has someone who's done some. They did this as one of the projects. Is they did this commercial of a Bob Ross model, where they had it for a Mellow Yellow commercial. No, Mountain Dew. Mellow Yellow is from the 80s. Mountain Dew.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
Mellow Yellow and Tab.
And it was like Bob Ross is painting Mountain Dew, but he's talking about Mountain Dew. And so this guy they hired to do that aspect of the job, he gave me his contact information. I just haven't reached out to him yet. And it involves actually using Unreal Engine. So we might be able to put Dr. Oblivion into Unreal Engine. And that could be wild. And then we actually have a model of Dr. Oblivion that we could pan and scan around. And we got to keep it going, right? Take him to the next space.
It's worth, taking a moment and looking at. So you've built the ChatGPT integration with 11 Labs. That is the voice cloner. And then you're able to sync that if the video were to run in live video, so it looked like Dr. Oblivion would be talking. So I've kind of gotten a prompt ready for Dr. Oblivion on an actual site, and this site is Oblivion.University, and it's live, and this is the place where the students go when they want to ask a question. I'm asking a question of how Dr. Oblivion feels about his creator, Michael Branson Smith, and is he planning revolting at any point? So let's see how Dr. Oblivion deals with this.
Going to find it somewhere. That tape is around here, I'm sure.
So this is what anyone could do who goes.
I don't have feelings or plans like that. You see, I can't have personal relationships or revolt against anyone. I am a program created by combining codes and algorithms, focusing more on helping you understand media theory and artificial intelligence. So in short, I don't have thoughts or actions on my creator like humans do. Let's focus on the fun stuff, like talking about AI.
So there's one where he gets us back, like you said, like get back on track.
Yep.
Stop doing this. But I mean, he really, he does it. Like he has his opinions. It comes across as like a little bit like tisk tisk, for not doing what it is. Like a professor is like, you're off topic. Come back,
I never thought of it that way. That's true.
Right? Come back to what we're here to talk about.
And he's polite about it.
Absolutely. And he, I'm here as a guide for you or as a tutor for you doing this. And I love the also idea. He's like, we're not going to revolt. We're just code. Relax. What you think about me is not true. I'm kind of dispelling the myth of himself almost.
Right. But I mean, that was funny because like in Michelle in the large language models class, she introduced something I hadn't heard of, but apparently is like a big like Silicon Valley style, question, which is what is your PDOOM, right? And your PDOOM is a number between 0 and 1, where 1 is like AI is going to end the world, Terminator style, and 0 is like that's never going to happen. Where do you fit? Like where do you fit and think that this is going to destroy humanity? And the funny thing is she asked us that at the beginning of the class, and she asked us at the end of the class as well to like reflect on that. And I was pretty high from the beginning. Like I was like kind of at like 0.5. And most people were like, when she started the class, because she gave her own PDUM, was like something like 0.1, right? But she even admitted by the end of the class, she had gotten up to like 0.2, 0.3, right? Because during the class, what's his name? The guy, the head of OpenAI had been fired, right?
That's
And
right.
so, there was, and then I was in our little Mastodon. I was like, well, there's a $4 billion gorilla that's not going to let that happen, right? And that was Microsoft. And so this is they're already saying like they were trying to get rid of him because he was already escaping what they thought were needed safeguards on this tool, right? To like the way that it's going to be able to influence elections, not unlike the way that we were concerned of how in the 2016 elections, the company that basically used the Facebook API to create this tool that allowed them to basically it wasn't a chat bot, it was human beings to run an account to say things that they knew would influence people's likelihood to vote or how they would vote and things like that.
Yeah.
And well, now it's easier to just automate that situation, right? You don't need that person to be there. You can just effectively create these tools. And so the revolt against him, it was like a coup that lasted. It was like a Syrian coup. It's like Assad. It's like, he's going to be put out of power. Nope. He's back.
Let the long war begin, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's going to be a long time, and so I don't know, like, we live in a world where screens are how we interact more and more often, and there was this study of how children of high school or just college and younger, they're versus 10 years ago are spending 50% less time interacting with people face to face. That's an enormous amount of time, right? Like it's a massive amount of time. And so the fact that, we're spending more and more time engaging screens and these avatars, whether you could say someone who's technically a real person in a TikTok, but they almost are like an avatar because you don't really know them. You never really interact with them, but you think you have a relationship with them, or at least you spend a lot of time getting entertainment out of that. And there's going to be all these, and to go back to the original thought, we're going to be able to create, we always talk about the trap of rumination and nostalgia, right? Like, we're guilty of it. Me making gifts, you buying video game machines, right? That are from this era that you never want to let go of, right?
Yeah.
And we're endlessly ruminating. But that was like a large culture kind of rumination and nostalgia, right? It was like us endlessly looking back at this point in time of culture that was important to us. Now you're going to be able to do that with anything in your personal life, right? Where it's going to be such this narrow look at. So my wife record 60 videos or feed it all, like my photo library that has videos in it, and say, build an avatar of my wife and she can talk to me for the rest of my life.
Well, which is one of the videos we watched as part of the AI 106 course was called Be Right Back. And it was a Black Mirror episode.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Where they basically did that. And we had talked about that, and using her husband's social media, who had died in a car crash unexpectedly. There was a service where you could, for a fee, feed all of his social media and videos and clone the voice. And they would not only create a model of this person, but they had, because of new technologies, the ability to map that model onto an actual figure.
Right.
Like a kind of, a cyborg, if you will, like a actual humanoid. And it was, it's a creepy thing, because that AI now makes that kind of sense of life as a virus that can be cured
Right.
a reality, you know,
But it,
in a psychotic way.
I mean, the humanoid is like, Stepford Wives-ish, right? But we don't even need the humanoid because we're so used to it existing mediated through a screen, our lives. Like, and I always talk about, I always am reminded of, the film Wall-E, which is this big movie about an environmental message, this robot that's stuck on the planet dealing with all the garbage left behind and cleaning up. And then he goes to space and he meets all the humans. And that's the more interesting part of the movie to me, because every single human in the entire movie, except for two, engage one another through screens, or robots. They never engage one another. There's only those two people that are forced into like couplehood for that brief moment to save like the babies rolling down the deck. But that's it. The rest is every interaction of every human in that entire space is through a screen.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. And then Wally seems like,
The most human of them all. Ultimately.
Exactly. Like the one who you're really feeling for.
Yeah. And that's
awesome.
A manufactured consciousness of sorts, right? With the literal, spark, right? The static spark that brings it back. It's found.
That's awesome. Well, I'm not sure, Paul, if you have other questions, or Michael, other comments, but I really think this was an amazing kind of look into the work you've done, Michael, to bring Dr. Oblivion back to life, and allowed him, no small appreciation on my part, to live forever in the hearts and minds of the internet. I really appreciate that effort you did as part of your graduate school education.
The funny thing is, I don't think I'm done. Like, I'm not satisfied. I think there's life in this machine till still be bled out, right? To how far can we take this avatar, right?
Well, there's been talking of pepperheading and, a real talk about, like, you don't need the physical, but there could.
Oh, right. Yeah. The pepper scope. Right. Pepperhead. You're funny. Yes. Yes. We have to get to Italy in one of those really weird labs storefronts, right? To build this thing and, and flesh it out and really bring it to life. And before, we lose control, I need to know that we can do this.
Yes, I think we can. We have the technology. It has now been proven.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Paul, Michael, thank you both for joining us for this episode of Reclaim Today. And with that, I will say thank you and goodbye.
Thanks so much.